Stop worrying about social skills. Seriously, forget the list of tips, the rules about smiling, or the awkward things you try to say when you meet someone new. Here's the crazy truth. Most social advice teaches you how to act fake, not how to connect. You see that person who walks into a room and instantly everyone wants to talk to them? They aren't special, they don't have better jokes, they just use a completely different set of mental rules than you do. If you follow the standard advice, you end up doing lots of work and still feeling totally alone or ignored. I used to be invisible. I studied every rule book and still felt like an outsider. The thing that finally clicked wasn't a technique. It was a single, simple mind shift that made all the old advice completely useless. This video isn't about being more charming. It's about changing 3 deep habits in your mind that make people genuinely excited to talk to you. Ready to stop pretending and finally be liked for who you really are? Let's start with the biggest lie we all believe.
Most of the time, the advice is this: socializing is about them. You have to ask great questions, nod a lot, listen carefully, and make them feel important. This sounds nice, but what does it feel like when you do it? You become an interviewer. You become the person who just keeps asking questions without saying anything real about yourself. Think about how you feel when someone only asks you questions. It feels like a chore. It feels like they're trying to check boxes. It creates a weird, cold energy. I'm doing this job asking to get this result, your approval. That's not friendship. That's an exchange of information. The worst part? When you focus only on the other person, you become terrified of sharing anything real about your own life because you think, what if they don't find this interesting? I better stick to the safe questions. You end up playing a role that is boring, polite, and instantly forgettable. This is the interviewer trap. We think being social is about being perfect, but the most magnetic people see talking as a trade, a gift. Here is the first big change. Stop walking into conversations thinking, how can I get this person to like me? That's the approval mindset, and it makes you needy. Instead, think, what cool or weird part of my world can I share with this person right now? This is the sharing mindset. Sharing value doesn't mean bragging. It means giving them a tiny window into your personality. For instance, the interviewer asks, "What did you do this weekend?" The sharer gives a story. "My weekend was a mess. I tried to build a small shelf and it ended up leaning so badly I think it's going to collapse on my cat. I ended up just watching bad sci-fi movies all day instead." Do you ever have a project that goes completely sideways? See the difference? The second way is a small, honest story. It has a tiny flaw. I failed at the shelf. And it makes the other person feel comfortable. It's not a question designed to pull information out. It's a story designed to let them in. You stop trying to be liked and simply be yourself. And that honesty is what makes people feel close to you. Now for a secret that will feel strange at first. After you share something honest, you must use your most powerful tool, the smart stop. Most people are terrified of silence. They rush to fill it with noise, a joke, or a desperate question. They're trying to prove they're not boring. But silence is not a problem. It's a moment of power. When you share something real and then let a pause hang there, 2 big things happen. First, you look confident. You're telling them, what I just said is interesting enough to wait for. Second, you give the other person time to truly think about what you said, not just jump back with a programmed answer. Studies show that people who speak slower and use planned pauses are seen as more believable, smarter, and more important, even if they say the exact same words as fast talkers. The real magic isn't in what you say, but in the weight you put on your own words. Have you ever talked to someone where you jump from one thing to the next? Work, weather, movies, food? That's topic hopping. You're trying to find anything you have in common to keep the chat going. It feels pointless because you never get below the surface. The most interesting people do the opposite. They go deep. They don't look for a shared thing, they look for a shared feeling or idea. if someone says, "I hate my job because the hours are insane," the topic hopper says, "Yeah, my job has long hours too." That's the end of the road. The go deeper response is, "Oh, that feeling of being totally overwhelmed and not having control over your own time, that's terrible. It's not just the hours, is it? It's the feeling that you're constantly juggling. What is the single most draining part of that feeling for you right now?" You didn't change the topic, you made it more important. You took a simple complaint and made it about a bigger shared human struggle, the need for control, the feeling of pressure. You're not just listening to their words, you're listening to the emotion under the words, making them feel understood and giving them permission to be honest with you. This is how you go from talking to connecting in one simple step. The human brain loves stories and feelings. The fastest way to create a bond is through real honesty. This doesn't mean crying about your childhood problems. It means sharing a small, safe, non-serious flaw or failure that makes you look human. Example, at a new gathering, don't just say, "I'm a teacher." Say, "I'm a teacher, but my students know I have one big weakness. I am terrible at remembering where I put my car keys. I once spent 15 minutes looking for them in my jacket. I realized I'm probably too focused on my lesson plans." What happens instantly? You shared a small, relatable flaw, forgetting keys, while also showing a positive trait. You are focused on your work. This makes you immediately more trustworthy than the person who only talks about their successes. Studies show that people like the high achiever who makes a small mistake more than the high achiever who seems flawless. We like the person who's like us, a little messy. This is the final, most powerful shift, and it kills the myth that you have to agree with people to be friends. Most advice tells you to find things you both like, but the most interesting socializers know that talking about your differences creates a much stronger friendship than talking about your similarities. Think about a good friend. You probably have a few things you totally disagree on. Maybe one loves cats and the other loves dogs. But when you talk about those things, it's fun. Your difference is the fuel for the conversation. It's where you both learn something new. Instead of just nodding when someone says something you don't agree with, get curious. Not angry, just curious. If they loved a TV show you hated, don't say, "That show was so bad." Say, "Oh, that's so interesting you loved that. I stopped watching after the first episode. What was the exact moment that hooked you in? I want to understand what I missed." You're not fighting their opinion. You're inviting them to explain their worldview. This is the ultimate form of respect. You show that their unique thoughts are worth your attention. It pulls the conversation out of boring small talk and into a real, meaningful exchange of ideas. You've used the 3 shifts. You shared something real, you talked about feelings, and you loved your differences. The chat was amazing. But now it's time to say goodbye, and the connection usually dies here. Why? Because you didn't set up the final small step. We like to stick to our promises, even small ones. Your goal is not just to have a good talk, but to create a tiny, easy reason to talk again. Instead of the week, "We should get together sometime," try something specific. "Hey, you mentioned you were looking for a specific type of pen for drawing. I know the exact store that sells those. I'm going to text you the address right now so you don't forget it." Or, "That podcast you mentioned sounds great. I'll listen to the first episode and I'll send you a quick note to tell you what I thought." You just did 2 key things. You gave them something helpful, and you created a simple, low-pressure reason for them to hear from you again. You're not asking for a date, you're simply finishing the helpful thing you started. This small, helpful action makes it easy and positive for them to connect with you again. To sum up, you are not a social actor, you are a sharer. Stop trying to be approved of and start sharing your unique thoughts. Stop skipping across topics and start digging deep into feelings. Stop trying to agree on everything and start getting excited about your differences. The most magnetic people aren't the smoothest, they're the most honest and real. They're not trying to get something from the conversation, they're just being themselves, and that confidence is what brings everyone closer. I want to know which of the 3 big changes, sharing value, going deeper, or loving the differences, are you going to try out in your next conversation? Tell me in the comments. And if this video gave you one new idea, please hit that like button and subscribe.